irrespective of the services rendered to the taxpayers in return. That speaks to the issue of the lack of trust between the taxpayer and the tax collector. And that is why people are not paying tax. Whatever the reformation you are doing in the tax system, notwithstanding the reformation, the content and context of the trust between the taxpayer and the tax collector need to be addressed. Any reform that did not address the trust deficiency between the taxpayer and the tax collector will not amount very much to success. The extent of Madam has spoken on how much she pays and how much is received. It speaks to the trust deficiency between the taxpayer and the tax collector. That aside, I will be talking to the issue of personal income tax and multiple taxation. The tax reform bill spoke extensively on the tax net. And I listened to the head of that group, Tunde, Taiwo Idele, when he spoke to the issue of the tax net. Historically, globally, the larger the number of taxpayers, the less the tax collected. Please, can we have an audience? The larger the number of taxpayers, the lower the tax collected. And the lower the number of taxpayers, the higher the total tax collected. He gave an example of tax collection in Britain, tax collection in Canada, tax collection in the USA. When you tax more the poor people, what they will pay contribute collectively will be small. But if you tax the rich, no matter how few the rich people are, and you tax them, they pay more. Let me give you an example. If all of us here in this room are to give willing contribution to assist a doctor to take a flight back to Uni Abuja, and all of us, there is a basket here, and all of us pay, you see that at the end, we will not be able to collect 2 million. All of us will pay. We will not be able to get 2 million. If you get 3 senators to support his flight back to Uni Abuja, he will get 6 million. That means the less the number of taxpayers, the more the tax collected. And the more the number of taxpayers, the less the tax collected. So tax is about taxability. And you can only tax who can pay. That is why the tax collectors in Maraba, in Masaka, in Jukwe, in Pape cannot collect much because they are taxing the poor. They are not collecting much because they are taxing the poor. And the tax reform did not mention anything about tax evasion. It was silent about tax evasion. It was also silent about the people who are not paying tax. Somebody spoke about property tax. There are houses worth hundreds of millions in Abuja. The owner of those houses should pay tax for those houses. The owners, the people who drink champagne, should pay tax for champagne, commensurate with the value of the champagne. Let's not talk about the value-added tax regime. What we call value-added tax today is not even known to the Constitution, because our Constitution was a copy of the 1979 Constitution. And this value-added tax came in 1989 through a military decree. And those who made the 1999 Constitution either forgot or neglected putting that in the Constitution. So value-added tax is still existing within the purview of the military decree. I hope the National Assembly will look into that to properly capture value-added tax and increase the list of exemptions from the value-added tax. Everything that has to do with the poor or the low-income earners that are on the value-added tax schedule should be removed. The value-added tax should be paid by those who can pay. That's why I say tax is about taxability. My professional here spoke about the simplicity or ease of collection and ease of payment. Professor Gajabeme, he so rest in peace, he said tax is a product of easy to pay, easy to collect. Okada riders pay the highest number of tax among the low-income earners in Nigeria. An average Okada rider in Nigeria pays close to 15,000 naira in a month. And he pays it because he pays 100 naira, 50 naira, 25 naira to each of the tax officers. Because of that, it is easy for him to pay and it is easy for the collectors to collect. If you ask him to pay tax 3,000 naira, him and tax collectors will fight. So there is going to be a need for this tax reform to accommodate the contents of easy to pay, easy to collect. Then I'm going to look at also the issue of the trust between the taxpayer and the tax collector. Madam spoke to the issue of medical bills in Sokoto and medical bills in Abuja. And she's looking at it from the perspective that her husband is paying tax and is paying for the NHIS scheme. Why should she again pay money in the hospital? The context is that many of us are not paying tax because we think that the tax money we are paying is being consumed or being embezzled by people, and we can physically see them. So it makes it difficult for taxpayers to even willingly pay. And the corruption network between the taxpayers and the tax collectors will negotiate. Instead of paying the due tax, which is 700,000, I negotiate and pay 150,000 naira and give the tax collector another 200,000. So put together, I'll pay 350,000 to cover the tax of 740,000. So there is no mention of the control mechanism of this tax evasion practice in Nigeria. So the makers of the bill should go back to the bill to look at how they can factor in the contents of tax evasion. Then the complaints, the agitations about the new tax reform, which we seek to address today, I think I put a lot of blame at the tables of the National Orientation Agency. That people need to know in their various languages and in the various mediums of communications that they can have or they can have access to have an idea, a clearly defined idea of what this project tax reform is all about. You are taxing the man that is pushing wheelbarrow. His total earning in a day, if you remove the cost of feeding him to generate energy to push that wheelbarrow, he almost earns nothing. He only used it to avoid him going into crime. And we are taxing this type of people. So this tax reform should accommodate or try to expunge from the luxury item list the items that have ceased to be luxury. They were luxury, yes. But as we speak today, they are no longer luxury. The responsibility of informing, educating, and sensitizing the masses to understand the content and context of this reform should be taken seriously as a part of this bill. The people ought to know, and like my learned brother would say, in the language that they understand. Because if I want to say now is to only the elites, the educated. If you tell my mother what we are saying now, she will only assume that we are gathered here and she saw light. The only thing she will ask for is that whether they are sharing food or they are sharing drinks. Because when people gather, their understanding is what do they stand to gain. So the National Orientation Agency, which is one agency that I think, I may be wrong, but in my opinion, they're not doing enough. They are not doing enough at all. That agency needs to wake up from their slumber. In the days of MAMSA, I think that agency, when it was MAMSA, it was doing much better than what it's doing now. Then the Ministry of Information and National Orientation, as it is Christian now, is also not doing enough. Then the public hearing on bills is also elitist. all the public hearings on all the bills from 1999 till the time we are talking, and even till tomorrow, it remains elitist. The people are not in the know. The total percentage of people who understand English in Nigeria to the extent of understanding this separation of this bill is less than 30%. My media, am I saying anything? And the people who believe in anything good can come out of this country is another less than another 22%. So when you're talking about tax reform, many Nigerians know that they are the ones to pay, that the people who should pay will not pay. That is the situation. That's why we are increasing the tax net and collecting less. Because the net we are increasing does not accommodate those who ought to pay this tax. I tell you for free that the senators, the ministers are not paying tax. The only tax they pay is value-added tax. Because they buy from the market like we buy. So they pay. So we should increase the value-added tax for luxury items such that we can accommodate these big wigs in the tax net. And also, the bill should make effort to also look at those who ordinarily cannot pay. And by way of conclusion, the National Assembly should drop all the sentiments and properly incorporate the rich, which includes themselves, into the tax net for better tax collection. And finally, the tax collected should be seen to be used. We do not see the tax being used. So the tax collected should be seen to be used to at least ameliorate the sufferings of the people. Thank you so much.